Sonic the Hedgehog is no surprise to be one of the greatest mascots ever in the history of video games, with a multitude of different games being added to the ever-growing catalogue of Sega's history, and it would be of no surprise to see the majority of all of these classic games make their way onto collections for fans to enjoy that couldn't play the originals or that wanted to revisit them in the current format with some additional tweaks. So when Sonic Jam released in 1997 on the Sega Saturn, it would be a compilation of the first 4 entries of the original Sonic collection, and often considered to be the greatest in the entire series, which would comprise of versions of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic 2, Sonic 3 and even Sonic and Knuckles. But there would be some additional elements added into the mix, as this version also gave you the ability to play even through the special stages from the get-go without you having to unlock them as you play through the games. And the collection also presents a multitude of different modes and tweaks to make it more user-friendly for more casual gamers or beginners, even with an easy mode that allows you to play as one level from each of the main stages in all of the games, so you don't have to play through each of the 3 zones. You only have to play through one before you proceed to the next stage, so it can shorten the experience, but it also makes it a lot easier because you'll have less enemies on screen. Even some of the movable danger objects like spike traps and so forth that would usually get in your way are either removed or they're static where they don't move, so they won't cause as much of a hindrance. So the developers really went out of their way to tweak a lot of the original assets from these games to make them more appealing and approachable for many players, which I think is pretty cool, and it just adds a completely different outlook to these classic games, essentially providing more interesting and newer ways to play them. But what's also pretty cool about this as well is that the game also implements a new addition with a 3D world map where you can play as Sonic himself, running around a whole detailed 3D environment where you can literally go to different buildings and even play through mini games where you have to race around the maps collecting rings within a timed limit or time trial. And each of the buildings that you can explore essentially are different museums that present a lot of historical information from the original Sonic series themselves, where you can listen to all of the original soundtracks from the classic games, but you can even view artwork from posters to original drawings and concepts from the early games themselves, along with access to videos of TV promo spots from the likes of later games or even TV advertisements that would have appeared around different seasons to promote the games, or even the cartoons that were appearing at the time, mainly in Japan. So this collection here would essentially be a one-stop shop to represent the entire history of the Sonic franchise up until that point when it released in 1997, and is still considered by many to be one of the best Sonic classic collections even to the current day. That is definitely worth trying. Like, even when you jump into the games, you can literally go into the extra game modes where you can unlock either time trial events or even go into the special stages to get going collecting the Chaos Emeralds. Or you can jump into the game, either play the original game modes or change the difficulty, which will tweak the gameplay somewhat. That will rearrange certain elements and items that you can collect, but also make the game a bit more approachable. With the graphics being on point, as we all know, the Sega Saturn is definitely the definitive platform for 2D games, and it's of no surprise here to see that the graphics are just as good here as they were on the original 16-bit Mega Drive. Although there does be some differences with regards to some of the sound effects when you interact with different objects. I found from my playthrough that they sounded somewhat different, and in many cases probably didn't feel as good or as authentic as that of the original versions. But everything else about the games were spot on, and it's easy to see why when you look at the reviews, as it got very high reviews across all magazine articles of its time, and it still holds up well even today. Like, in fairness, there's so much variety here that will appeal to all different dynamics of players, even for those of us that were never really good at Sonic games in the years gone by. With the easy modes, it makes them a lot more approachable so that casual gamers can really get into it and finally start to enjoy the experiences. And what's also really cool about the game is that even though you have all of the additional artwork and elements, even the video sequences, the game does also give you digital representations of the original manuals that would have come with the games themselves. So you can see all of the control systems, even the screenshots of everything telling you the background story about the game and so forth, so it is pretty cool. A lot of effort went into this to create the detail that's displayed. Like, the games themselves are definitely worth playing. I had a lot of fun even going in and playing on the easy modes, just to witness and see the changes of how the games felt and played compared to that of the originals, which I've played for years, ever since I was 8 years old, from playing the original Sonic when it came out first on the Mega Drive. It was very cool to go back and to play them, but to experience them in a different way. And definitely one of the highlights was the 3D open world map, so that you could literally go around to different areas, play mini games, explore, but also to witness the history of Sega and the Sonic franchise itself. If you wanted that extra level of detail, you will find that here. Plus for me, I just spent ages just going into the soundtrack library and listening to all of the classic tunes, because for me, the classic Sonic games have without a doubt some of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in video games. They're so iconic, they're so catchy, and they're just as good today to listen to as ever. Even now, as I'm a lot older, I still will go back and listen to these time and again, because I just love them so much. They just bring back so many great memories that you just truly can't forget, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in that sense. It's a fantastic collection, it's a fantastic piece of gaming history, even the history of Sega and Sonic and the Sonic character itself, that whether you want to revisit the games for nostalgic elements or if you've only played the games for the first time, this is definitely a collection I recommend that you try. There's so much here and there's so much variety that will definitely keep you playing for a while, as these original 4 Sonic games are, in my opinion, the best in the series out of all of them, even with the modern games, because these are the games you will always go back to play. That is almost a guarantee. Very, very cool collection indeed, definitely worth a try. There's so much value here that will definitely keep your interest for a while. And with that being said, this is just but one of many interesting classic collections that have made way to multiple platforms over the years, including even Sonic games as well, which are represented on more modern systems over the years, which we can learn more about in this next video, that will highlight a lot of these classic elements, even other games that were released by Sega over the years that you may not have ever got to play, but you can do so now, so be sure to check it out.